Okay, Honors Algebra 2. This should be Thursday the 16th. Kind of tough to keep the day straight, but that's what I believe we are at, the 16th of Thursday. And yesterday we started looking at an arithmetic sequence, and we're going to continue to do that today. And what we're going to specifically try to do today is determine what's called an nth term rule for the arithmetic sequence. What is an nth term rule? That's a rule that will allow us to find any number out here in our list. Okay? I mean, if we skip down here to this first example, we can kind of work ahead here a little bit. We see that we're subtracting 7 as we go across there. Well, what if we wanted to get to the 50th number? What are we going to do? Just keep subtracting 7 in our calculator and counting as we go until we get to the 50th number? Well, we don't want to do that. Some of you might try that, and I think I know who would, but we don't want to do that. We want to develop a rule that we can just go straight to that number, all right? And that's called an nth term rule, okay? And that's what we're going to look at calculating today. And in this first example, we're going to figure out how to get the 36th number without having to subtract 7 35 times, okay? So we're getting ahead of ourselves here a little bit, but let's just take a look at the information that we are given here. What do we know? We know that our first term is 62, and that's always a good number to know because you always want to know where you start. And then we can figure out what we do to go from one number to the next. We've already talked about that. We are subtracting 7. Now remember, when you subtract, when your d value is negative, eventually we'll subtract enough that we'll get to a negative number. So we'll see if we do that by the time we get to the 36th number. So these are the only two pieces of information we can gather from here that would be able to be plugged into our formula. And if we plug those two in, we get something like that. And then if we start doing a little math and simplifying, we come up with an equation that the nth term, now remember what that means, excuse me here, remember what this means. This is any number in line, okay? We're going to find the 36, but it could be the 50th, the 100th, the 1000th, it doesn't matter. How do we find that number? Well, we just do negative 7 times that position, because the n is the position of the number, plus 69. So what are we going to do if we want to find the 36th number in line? Well, we're just going to take that position, that 36, and plug it in. Like that. And we solve it and we find out that we do get a negative number, like we thought we were. And we get the 36th number in line is negative 183. Okay? So if we are just given a sequence, we can calculate the first term, we can calculate the common difference, we can plug those in, and we can come up with our rule. But we need to know the first term and the common difference in order to make this rule. Once we have this rule, we can use it to find any number in line. I had you find the 36th number, we just plug in that position, work the problem, and we come up with our answer. So let's look at getting this rule, this nth term rule, given some different information. So here we say, let's see if we can figure out this rule. If we know the 51st number in line is 97, so we got to go all the way out to the 51st number and we see a 97 sitting there. And we know what we're doing. We're adding 4. Okay, so if we start filling in our information, now remember, when we know the 51st number is 97, we know two things. We know the position we're going to, the 51st position, and we know the number we see when we get there. We see a 97. And we also know in this problem how we make our steps. We are adding 4 as we go. So if we fill that in, now notice what we don't know. We don't know where we start at. We don't know the first term. We need to know that. That's important. Well, this will let us figure that out. We just do the math and we find out our first term is 103. Okay. Now we would say to ourselves, how do we get to the any number in line, the nth number in line? Well, we would start at this negative 103, and we would add n minus 1 of our d's, which is 4. And we just simplify this. 4n minus 4. So we get the nth number. To get to the nth number, to get to any number in our list, we would multiply 4 times the position of that number and subtract 107. Okay, there is our nth term rule. And one way that you can check yourself is, we know that by the time we get to the 51st number, we should get 107. So if you plug that in, 4 times 51 is 204 minus 107. That does equal 97. So we can use that information we were given to kind of check ourselves. But this is what we're after. We're after the nth term rule. So now if I say, what's the 101st number in line? Well, you just plug 101 in here and you tell me. Okay? All right, let's see. What else could we be given? Let's see if we can do this one. Can we find the nth term rule for a sequence that has a 5th number of 48 and an 18th number of 22? So notice what we do not know. We do not know what the first number is, but we know the 5th number in line is 48 and the 18th number in line is 22. Now remember, each one of these gives us 2 pieces of information. It gives us the position and the number that we see there. So like here, the 18th number in line would be a 22. So let's kind of use that to our advantage here. So this first one, the 5th term is 48. What would that tell me? That would tell me to get to 48, I'd start at the first number, which I don't know, and I would add 5 minus 1, or 4 of whatever my d's are. So if I clean that up, I get that equation. What does this second term that we know and position tell us? Well, it tells us to get to 22, we would start at our first number, which we don't know, and we would add 17 of those d's. Now realize this a sub 1 and this a sub 1 are the exact same thing. This d and this d are the exact same thing. So when I clean this one up and I get that, what can I do with these 2 equations to figure out what my first term and my common difference is? I can put them together and do elimination. Now the good thing about these are, we've already got the same variable here, so to do elimination, all we need to do is subtract them. And if we subtract them, we get 26 equals negative 13d. We find out that we're subtracting 2. Let's take a look and see if subtracting 2 makes sense. The 5th number was 48. The 18th number, so farther out, is smaller. Well, how do you go from a large number to a small number? You have to subtract. So this is now making sense to me. Okay? Then we can take our negative 2 and plug it back in, just like we're doing a normal elimination problem, and we'll figure out our first term is 56. Okay, does that make sense? 56 is the first term. By the time you subtract 2 to get to the 5th term, you're smaller, 48. And then you keep subtracting, get the 18th, you're even smaller yet. So far things are making sense. Then we would just take those 2 pieces of information, that our common difference is negative 2 and our first term is 56, and we would plug them in. There we go. Simplify it like we have been, and we get our rule of negative 2n plus 58. Now again, we can use what we were given, that our 5th number is 48. Let's take a 5 and plug it in here. That would be negative 10 plus 58 is 48. Our 18th number is 22. Let's plug an 18 in here. That would be negative 36 plus 58 does equal positive 22. So we can kind of use what we were given to check ourselves. But this is the rule. That's called the nth term rule, and that will be used. That can be used to find any number in our list without having to, in this case, subtract 2 a multitude of times. Okay, so that's what your assignment today is, to find these nth term rules. And again, you have a short homework. And again, I'll post those answers tomorrow, so have yours posted by 8:30, and we'll go from there. Okay, talk to you later.